still licking the wounds of our own endless conflicts. From the outside, Earth must have looked like a planet eating itself. News feeds overflowing with dissent, social unrest, political chaos. They mistook noise for weakness. That was their first mistake. I was stationed at the Andes Array when it began. A red alert flashed through my neural HUD, 200 hostile vessels detected. Trajectory, Sol 3. I didn't believe it at first. No species had ever dared approach with such force. Not even the Kalari, who once claimed our sun as holy territory. But this was something different. This was a coalition, unified by fear of what humanity might become. Their fleet crossed the asteroid belt in formation, gleaming metal leviathans, bristling with energy cannons and quantum torpedoes. It should have been awe-inspiring. But all I felt was a cold, surgical calm. They thought they were bringing fire to cavemen. What they didn't see were the shadows we'd built our future in. The orbital rail platforms disguised as abandoned stations. The AI swarms embedded within lunar mining rigs. The defense net spanning the Kuiper Belt, programmed for one mission, annihilation. The first enemy ships dropped from warp near Jupiter. We didn't wait. A volley of dark energy pulses ripped through their command chain. 17 vessels gone before they even knew we'd fired. When the rest surged forward, we triggered Contingency Black. Earth's fragmented nations went silent, and then united. Instant comms across every continent. Automated launch protocols. Human and AI in perfect sync. They weren't ready for that. I watched from the array as Earth lit up, not with fear, but fury. The sky wasn't falling. It was fighting back. And in that moment, I understood, this wasn't an invasion. It was an execution. They tried diplomacy first, well, their version of it. A broadcast in 7 galactic tongues, projecting a list of surrender conditions and an offer of assimilation. I listened to it play over the comms, their voices smug with superiority, never imagining we might decline. Never imagining we'd laugh. The transmission was cut short by a pulse from one of our orbital decoys, a clean burst of white noise that jammed their network for precisely 90 seconds. Long enough for us to slip 3 stealth cruisers behind their flanks. By the time their systems recovered, those cruisers had already launched hypersonic warheads into the heart of their formation. 5 command vessels gone. No warning. No mercy. They didn't understand our kind of warfare. To them, war was a spectacle, grand declarations, honorable duels, clean casualties. But humanity? We made war dirty. We made it personal. We fought like a species with nothing to lose and everything to prove. I was inside the Andes control room, watching it all unfold through a tactical feed. Operators spoke in clipped tones. AI algorithms adjusted targeting vectors in real time. Every satellite and drone was feeding into a single, terrifyingly efficient mind. We weren't just reacting. We were anticipating, adapting, evolving. The enemy tried to counter. They sent boarding pods toward our orbital stations. Some made it through. I remember one in particular, a hulking brute of a warrior, all muscle and armor, stomping through a loading bay like a god. It lasted 40 seconds before a janitor with a plasma cutter ended it. That's who we are. Survivors. Monsters, if pushed. They thought this would be over in a day. But the first day was ours. And as their broken ships rained down in pieces over the Pacific, I knew, we'd already changed the rules of this war. They regrouped over the Atlantic, what was left of them. Their sleek flagships hovered above the clouds, casting massive shadows across the ocean. From orbit, they looked like a wall of steel and fury, but closer, I could see it, hesitation. We'd bled them. Badly. And they didn't understand how. I was reassigned to a high-orbit drone relay, monitoring the enemy's movements in real time. The relay station was cold and quiet, just me, an AI named Yora, and rows of hollow-eyed Recon feeds. We watched as the aliens deployed atmospheric probes, trying to map our infrastructure, locate weak points. Yora said it best, they scan for logic. But Earth bleeds chaos. They won't find what they're looking for. Down below, humanity was mobilizing like never before. Every bunker, every hidden installation, every off-grid research lab came alive. Entire continents were speaking in unison now. Old enemies were exchanging tactical data without a word of suspicion. The world's firewalls dropped, and for the first time in history, Earth moved as one organism. We were loud, messy, unfiltered, and unified. The aliens didn't know what to target. Our military. Too decentralized. Our cities, already evacuated. Our infrastructure, too layered, too redundant, too wild. They were fighting a system that thrived in entropy. That night, they tried to level Rio. 6 cruisers broke formation and descended fast, pulsing energy beams down onto the coastline. But they were met by a swarm of Earth's newest secret, nanocloud interceptors. 100 billion microscopic machines, launched from the ocean itself, devoured the ships mid-air. No explosions. Just silence, and then ash. Yora's voice was calm as she reported, "They've lost tactical superiority. Shall I initiate global counterstrike protocol?" I whispered, "Do it." And Earth, our beautiful, brutal home, began to bite back with everything it had. The counterstrike wasn't loud. It was surgical. Every action calculated, every blow designed to dismantle, not just their ships, but their confidence. We didn't aim for their hulls. We aimed for their minds. I was patched into the neural strike net, a command interface linking operatives across the planet in real time. The signal was raw, humming with adrenaline and decision-making. From the Arctic launch silos to deep-sea launch bays, we deployed zero-delay weapons, neutron bursters, black ice cyber warfare payloads, and orbital prism arrays that bent light itself into lances of focused death. Their ships started disappearing from the sky, not crashing, not exploding. Just gone. Slain so quickly their systems didn't have time to register the kill. Every time one vanished, I felt it like a vibration in my teeth. Precision. Finality. They tried to retaliate. Hit back with gravity warps and kinetic rods the size of city blocks. One of those rods struck near the Mojave Array. A whole mountain range turned to glass. But when the dust cleared, the array was still standing, shielded beneath 15 meters of carbon foam armor and buried AI cores. Their confusion was turning to fear. You could see it in their flight paths. No more discipline. No more clean formations. They scattered like predators, unsure if they were still at the top of the food chain. One of their diplomats, if you could call him that, sent another message. A shaky voice speaking hurriedly in a tongue spliced together from trade languages and treaty codes. He asked for terms. Asked what we wanted. I remember standing there, blinking at the message. What did we want? I tapped the MIC. My voice steady. You came here to end us. That was your first mistake. Thinking we wouldn't end you back was your last. They didn't answer after that. Not with words. Just with more ships. Reinforcements, heavier, meaner, older things dredged from deep in their armadas. War relics with ancient names and a thirst for conquest. They must have thought brute force would succeed where precision failed. But brute force works best on something brittle. Humanity. We bend. We shift. And when we break upward. I was transferred again, this time to the lunar core, Earth's real command hub. Buried beneath the Sea of Tranquility, it housed the Ark intelligence, the one AI they didn't even let humans talk to without clearance. I was granted temporary link access. Just enough to feel its presence. The Ark was quiet, but not passive. Like a predator beneath still water. It had calculated 472 ways the battle could end. In 470 of them, we won. The new enemy ships breached orbit with their own tricks, dimensional phasing, temporal disruptors, plasma waveforms we hadn't seen before. But none of it mattered. We didn't fight them ship to ship anymore. We fought them with gravity snares that turned their speed against them. We cracked their hulls using quantum resonance, shaking their structures apart at the molecular level. They were advanced. But we had become unpredictable. Some of them tried to escape. That's when Earth's final card came into play. Project Hecate. A chain singularity launched from Europa's ice shell. It expanded into a hungry tear in spacetime right above the planet's thermosphere. A perfect trap, invisible, silent, irresistible. One by one, their ships vanished into it. Not destroyed. Just unmade. By the time the last of their fleet blinked out, all that remained in orbit was silence, and the glimmering light of Earth below. We had survived the impossible. And now the galaxy would have to live with what that meant. Word of their defeat didn't just ripple, it detonated across the galaxy. Hundreds of civilizations had watched from a distance, too cautious to commit, too confident in our destruction to intervene. Now, they watched in stunned silence. 200 ships sent. None returned. No footage. No survivors. Just static where an armada used to be. I stood in the debrief chamber beneath the lunar core, bathed in low blue light, watching transmissions flood in. Not messages of war, questions. Cautious greetings. Probes masked as peace envoys. One empire even offered tribute. It was surreal. For the first time in history, we were not the ones looking outward in wonder. They were looking in. They wanted to know how. How had we done it? What weapons had we used? What new gods had we made? We told them nothing. Because it wasn't just the weapons. It was us. Our nature. Our refusal to die quietly. Our ability to learn pain like language. They had tried to erase a species and instead created something else, something far more dangerous. The Ark intelligence went dark after the battle, its task complete. We sealed the lunar core. Buried our weapons. But we didn't celebrate. Not the way they expected us to. There were no parades, no speeches. Only silence, and the slow return to normal life, if such a thing was even possible anymore. They would never forget what we did. And more importantly, they'd never again assume Earth was weak. The stars had changed. The galaxy had changed. And so had we. That night, looking up at the sky from the ruins of an old comm tower, I whispered to myself something I hadn't dared believe until now. Maybe now, they'll finally leave us alone. But they didn't leave us alone. Not completely. 3 weeks after the last enemy ship vanished into the singularity, a new signal reached us, quiet, precise, and unmistakably alien. It came from outside the galactic rim. Not a threat. Not a plea. Just a question. Are you still human? I didn't know how to answer. None of us did. I walked through the ruins of the Andes array, now silent beneath the stars it once watched. The mountain air was colder than I remembered. We had won the war, if you could call it that, but something had shifted. In the ashes of victory, humanity was beginning to question what it had become. Our weapons had gone beyond warfare. Our minds had merged with machines. Our unity had cost us our chaos. I remembered the janitor with the plasma cutter. The defiance in his eyes. That moment, more than any superweapon, had defined us. Not our strength. Our refusal. The council debated whether to respond to the signal. Some argued it was bait. Others, an olive branch. But I thought it was neither. It was fear. Not fear of our weapons or our defenses, but fear of what they'd awakened. Of what might happen if humanity chose not to stop at survival. If we chose to expand. We eventually answered. Just a single line, transmitted in over 1,000 frequencies. We are still human. But now you know what that means. The stars remained silent. But I could feel it, out there, beyond the rim, civilizations were holding their breath. Not planning invasions. Not plotting control. Listening. Because we were no longer the ones staring into the dark, wondering what waited beyond. Now, the galaxy was staring back, wondering if we'd come knocking next.